So we're talking about factoring today. We have factored expression, and if the expression cannot be factored, we're going to say so. I'm going to show you a little different way than what you've seen so far. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make an x, and I'm going to put in the bottom part of my x what needs to be multiplied. So I need a number that multiplies to be negative 18, and I need a number that adds to be negative 3. So I need two numbers that multiply to be negative 18 that add to be negative 3. So let's think about that. Let's see. What can add to be negative 18, multiply to be negative 18 and add to be negative 3? I think that would be negative 6 and positive 3. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18, and negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. Once we have this figured out, our factors, and it matches the top and the bottom, we just put it inside our factors, x minus 6 and x plus 3. And there is our trinomial factored into our factored form. So let's try this again. Same thing. I'm going to make an x. Okay. I want it to multiply to be two numbers to multiply to be 48 and to add to be 14. So what two numbers would multiply to be 48, add to be 14? Well, I know that 12 and 4 multiply to be 48, but 12 plus 4 is not 14, so that's not going to work. Let's see, what else is 48? 6 times 8 is 48, and 6 plus 8 is 14. So it's going to be positive 6 and positive 8. So if we factor here, I'm going to get x plus 6 and x plus 8. Now we can check our work. If you're still unsure, you can check your work by just distributing everything back out. So x times x is x squared. X times 8 is 8x. 6 times x is 6x. And 6 times 8 is 48. And combine our like terms in the middle, I get x squared plus 14x plus 48. So we factored, and then we rechecked our work to make sure it looks exactly like the first term. So we're going to continue going on. We're going to do a few more of these, and then we're going to move on to a different type of equation. I'm going to make my x. I need two numbers that multiply to be negative 5 and add to be negative 9. Well, my only multiples of 5 are 1 and 5. So if I have a negative 1 and a positive 5, that gives me positive 4. And then if I switch my signs and I get 1 and negative 5, that gives me negative 4. There's no way I can get a negative 9 from multiples of 5. So this one cannot be factored. And I do want to just say this real quick. If it's hard, just because it's a hard one to do does not mean that it cannot be factored. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for this one. Although what's different about this equation is that this expression is that I don't have a middle term. There's no x there. But I can still do the same thing I've been doing. I want two numbers that multiply to be 16. And since there's no term with an x, nothing means 0. So I want two numbers that multiply to be negative 16 and add to be 0. So that would be 4 and negative 4. So here we go. X plus 4 and x minus 4. Great. So let's move on to the different type of expression. And the difference in this one and what we have been doing is now we have a coefficient in front of our x squared. We're going to do something a little different than what we've done because I cannot just do the x like I have been doing. I'm going to have to do something different. So this time I'm going to try an area model. So I'm going to make a square this time. I'm going to put my a term, remember this is ax squared plus bx plus c, and I'm going to put my a term in my first box, so that will be 3x squared. And I'm going to put my c term in my last box, which is negative 12. Okay, so I have two boxes. I have to figure out what that is. Well, now I'm going to bring in what I have been doing, which is my x. Okay, a little different though. I'm just going to still take my b term. I still want it to add up to be 5. But this time, instead of in the bottom just putting my c term, I need to multiply my a coefficient and my c coefficient together. So 3 times negative 12 is negative 36. Well, how did I get that? Negative 3 times 12. Okay? Sorry, it's 3 times negative 12. Let me fix that here. So it's 3 times negative 12. Okay? And I get negative 36. So again, I want the factors that multiply to be negative 36 and add to be 5. So what are my multiples of 36 that would give me 5? 4 and 9. So I'm going to have to, one of them is going to have to be a negative because I want it to multiply to be negative 36. But when I add them together, I want a positive 5. So I want my 9 to be positive. So I want a negative 4. And remember, these are my x terms that go in the middle. So I'm going to put a 9x here and a negative 4x here. Now remember, if I add these two terms together, I get, if I add these two terms together, I get 5x. Okay? So I just wanted to point that out really quickly. So now I'm going to factor. What can I take out of 3x squared and 9x? Well, I can take a 3x out of that. And what can I take out of negative 4x and negative 12? Well, I can take a negative 4. I'm going to do the same thing vertically now. What can I take out of 3x squared and negative 4x? Well, the only thing I can take out of there is an x. And what can I take out of negative 9x and negative 12? Well, 3 goes in both 9 and negative 12. So I can take a 3 out of there. And only one of the terms have x, so I can't take an x out. So my factored form of this expression would be 3x minus 4 and x plus 3. So I just did this as what's the area of this square? X plus 3. X plus 3 and 3x minus 4, length times width, gives me the area of my square. So I'm going to do the same thing over again with my other equation. I'm going to write a little smaller this time so it fits. So I've got my square. A term goes in the top box, negative 8x squared. My c term goes in the last box. And then I want to make an x here. My b term goes in the top here. And I'm going to multiply my a and my c terms together, and I get 80. Okay, so what are my multiples of 80 that will give me 38? 40 and 2 would work if one of them was a negative. So I guess that's not going to work very well. Let's see, what else are my multiples of 80? Let's see. So 20, and let's just write them over here. So we've got 1 and 80. We've got 2 and 40. 3, 4, 4 and 10. Oh, 4 and 8. Whew. I'm doing really good. Let's try that again. 2 and 40, 4 and 20, that would give me 24. Maybe this one is not able to be factored. So, because so far none of my things will go into there. 5 goes into 8 16 times. That would give me 21. I keep getting lower, so there's no way I'm going to get to 38. So this cannot be factored. Okay, there we go. So now that we can factor these, we need to be able to solve them. So we're going to do I guess we have 2 more to factor. Forgot where I was at. We're going to do the same thing again. Here we go, our little square. I'm going to put my A term here and my C term here. Make an X. I need to add to be 0. I don't have a B term, so that's 0. 1 times 16, negative 1 times 16 is negative 16. So I want to multiply to be negative 16 and add to be 0. So it'll be negative 4 and 4. Negative 4x and positive 4x. So now we're going to factor again. So what can I take out of negative 4x and 16x squared? Well, I can take a 4x out of that. And what can I take out of 4x minus 1? Oh, minus 1. And what can I take out of 16x squared and 4x? 4x. Negative 4x and minus 1. Minus 1. So my factored form is 4x minus 1 times 4x plus 1. Sorry, I messed up on the minus sign. It's a positive and a negative. I can only take the positive out. Okay, so there's my factored form. One more problem to do, and then we'll solve. Then we're going to set them equal to 0 and solve for them. So I've got 9x squared plus 4. I want to add to be 12, and it's got to multiply to be 36. So what are my multiples of 36 that add to be 12? Well, that would be 6 and 6. So I have 6x and 6x. Now I'm going to factor my rows and my columns. 9x squared and 6x would be 3x. And 6x and 4 would be 2. And since I have the same rows and columns, it's going to be 3x and 2 again. So my factored form is going to be 3x plus 2 times 3x plus 2. Or I can write that as 3x plus 2 squared. Okay, now we want to solve. Okay? So we're going to factor again. This one does not have a coefficient, so I can just use the little x. So I want to multiply to be negative 30 and add to be negative 7. What are my 2 factors of negative 30 that add to be negative 7? What are my factors of 30 that add to be 7? 6 and 5, no, that doesn't work. 2 and 15. 3 and 10, there we go. 3 and 10. And I need a negative 7, so that means my bigger number is going to be negative. So my factored form is going to be x plus 3 and x minus 10. And that all has to equal 0. Remember that when I have 2 things that multiply together and equal 0, one of those things has to be 0. So I'm going to say x plus 3 equals 0, and x minus 10 equals 0. So x has to equal negative 3 and positive 10. Okay, one more problem, and we're done. Now I'm looking at this problem, and I can see that 3 goes into each one of those terms, so I'm going to make it a little easier for me, because the multiples are 63, or there's a lot, and it's kind of big, so let's make it a little easier. Let's take a 3 out of everything. So if I take a 3 out of 6, I get 2x squared. If I take a 3 out of 3, I get 1x. and then 3 out of 63 is 21 equals 0. Now I'm going to just factor the inside. And I'm going to make my square like we've been doing. So I get 2x squared minus 21. And I want it to add up to be negative 1. And I need the factors of negative 42. So that would be 6 and 7. I need one of them to be negative, and I need a negative 1, so the 7 will be negative. So this is 6x and negative 7x. And now we're going to factor our columns and our rows. So 2x squared and 6x, I can take a 2x out of that. And negative 7x and negative 21, I can factor out a negative 7. Now I'm going to do my columns. So 2x squared and negative 7x would be x. And 6x and negative 21 is going to be 3. Okay, so my factored form is going to be 3 times 2x minus 7 and x plus 3 equals 0. Now we just want to solve for x. So I have to divide by 3 first, get rid of this 3. Divide by 3. Okay, I get 2x minus 7 and x plus 3 equals 0. So 2x minus 7 equals 0 and x plus 3 equals 0. So x is going to equal negative 3 and 7 halves. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. If you have any questions, please come in and ask me.